we're talking about maximizing energy efficiency, energy savings, and really focusing on some funding opportunities that exist within the sector to kind of support those efforts. So again, welcome to this webinar, hoping to boost your bottom line. Foundries at the center of both heavy energy use and the opportunity for transformation. The session is designed specifically to help you understand and access the vast landscape of incentives, tax credits, and funding programs that can support your upgrades. Over the next hour, we'll cover the breadth of federal, state, and local opportunities and translate them into concrete actions. For foundry owners and operators, we'll look to reduce upfront capital costs, improve energy efficiency, and future-proof your business against both regulatory risk and market volatility. By the end of the session, you'll walk away with a practical roadmap to access millions in available funds, reduce your carbon footprint, and boost profitability. So, foundries sit at the nexus of cost, carbon, and compliance. Manufacturing as a whole accounts for more than 20% of global carbon emissions and over half the total global energy consumption, meaning that foundries carry a significant share of that responsibility. Energy is not just a sustainability concern, it is a financial one. For many foundries, energy represents up to 30% of their total operating costs. Rising fuel prices and grid volatility make this burden even heavier, putting profitability under strain. On top of cost pressures, policy and market shifts are also accelerating. ESG mandates, investor scrutiny, regulatory frameworks like carbon caps are becoming more stringent. Foundries that act now can gain a competitive edge, while those who delay risk penalties, reputational harm, and higher cost in the long term. So let's look at the financial side of energy. For foundries, energy can represent nearly a third of operating expenses, directly cutting into margins. This makes energy one of the most critical levers for improving profitability. The good news is that the opportunity is just as large as the challenge. Modern energy efficient equipment and process upgrades, from furnace retrofits to ventilation system optimization, can cut energy use by between 10 and 40%. These savings often yield payback periods of under 5 years, which is great, especially when you're able to leverage available grants and incentives. But efficiency is not only about using less, it's also about risk management. Energy markets are increasingly volatile, driven by geopolitical events, grid constraints, and fuel price fluctuations. By lowering baseline consumption, foundries are less exposed to future price swings. And when paired with Environ's procurement strategies, hedging, forward contracting, and renewable energy PPAs, organizations can protect themselves against both rising costs and that market volatility. So to start to take a look at these incentives, we're going to start at the federal level. Federal policy has unlocked an unprecedented wave of funding for clean energy and energy efficient upgrades. The Inflation Reduction Act is a game changer, but I do want to note that there are changes to the Inflation Reduction Act as of this summer. So many of the incentives and grant opportunities that are listed here are actually being done away with next summer, which promotes or just increases the urgency of acting now if you're able to do so. That said, I will still give a little bit of a perspective on each of these opportunities. The Section 48 investment tax credit provides a baseline 30% credit for renewable energy systems, such as solar installations, with even higher benefits available if you meet labor and domestic content requirements. Again, this is something that will be likely going away, and there's news about this or updates, or there have been over the last 45 days, But as of right now, this still exists for projects that are being considered or potentially mobilizing in the near term. Section 45X incentivizes the domestic production of clean energy components, which can be relevant to your organization if you supply resources into these markets. Section 179D, meanwhile, offers deductions of up to $5 per square foot for energy efficiency building upgrades. This can directly apply to any upgrade that your organization is considering. And that $5 per square foot number can be met. It does range from around $1 to $5 per square foot if you meet certain labor and apprenticeship requirements. Together, these provisions drastically lower the capital cost of energy projects, enabling Foundries to future-proof operations while boosting profitability. Again, if you can act now. There are additional changes to likely come, but we definitely wanted to highlight that while there's action at the federal level, the balance of this presentation is going to dive a little bit deeper into state-by-state or regional opportunities. And these state or regional opportunities do exist and are likely to continue to exist in the absence of any type of federal direction. So the next slide here is a poll. We want to try to understand where our audience is calling in from.
Jeff, the poll is live, so I'm sure the answers will start coming in here in a second.
And there's also a second question that is posed, which is on a subsequent slide. But just trying to understand the level of familiarity with the attendees on rebates, grants, tax incentives. Have you gotten them? Have you not received them?
Give it about 15 more seconds here.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, it looks like for which states do you operate manufacturing facilities? A lot of Illinois, Wisconsin, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Arkansas, Alabama, Minnesota.
Awesome. Glad to have everybody.
And then how familiar are you with, let me find this poll. How familiar are you with available rebates, grants, and tax incentives for manufacturing upgrades? We have 0 with very familiar, 7 with somewhat familiar, another 7 with not familiar.
Awesome. Thank you, Bill. Well, given those responses, hopefully that the balance of this presentation, as well as the information communicated so far, gives you some insight and guidance as to what you can do at your organization within your facilities. And please note that, again, there's a Q&A section towards the end of the presentation. So if something is not covered, please feel free to ask your questions, and either myself or some of our additional subject matter expertise on my team, we can bring them in to try to answer those questions and give you some guidance to capture incentives and improve energy efficiency at your facilities. So as I mentioned, we want to dig a little bit deeper into the state and regional opportunities. So the funding landscape is not uniform. It really does vary by state and by region, with certain areas offering particularly strong incentive, grant, and funding opportunities. Most of these are highlighted in the graph on this slide. This is a graph from 2025, as indicated here, looking to highlight or really rank all of the states by policy developments and state efforts to save energy. That latter bucket capturing utility and incentive programs. Typically, those are driven by state mandates. So as you can see here, the West Coast has some very, very strong energy efficiency scores, along with the Northeast. But some of the areas in the Midwest also are ranked relatively high in comparison, with Denver kind of being the only oddity there in the Midwest. But what we are going to talk about today specifically are programs in Pennsylvania, New York, and then the West and the Northeast. So in Pennsylvania, there is a program called RISE PA, which has dedicated $400 million towards greenhouse gas reduction, with priority given to industrial facilities like those in the manufacturing sector. Unfortunately, the applications for the initial round of PA RISE funding are actually due August 29th. So not a lot of time to capitalize if you're looking to submit an application, but did just want to call that out here. Additionally, New York, again, highlighted here as one of the top states, as a lot of different programs at the utility and state level. One program listed on the slide here is the NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. They have a program called the On-Site Energy Manager, or OSEM, and the FlexTech program, both of which can cover a significant amount of the cost of either audits or the cost of onboarding an individual or a consulting firm to effectively develop and implement an energy management program for an organization. These programs, typically, and the New York program specifically, can also be combined with other local utility incentives. So you're not only offsetting the cost of identifying projects, but you're also, in theory, providing yourself the opportunity to offset that first cost for the efficiency measures identified as a result of either the audits or any other technical assistance that an organization receives. Elsewhere, the Northeast has longstanding utility-led initiatives like Mass Save in Massachusetts, while the West Coast and mountain regions provide targeted funding such as California's Self-Generation Incentive Program for storage and Energize Denver's compliance-driven rebates. Organizations in these regions can tap into significant capital support to accelerate upgrades that you're considering or might consider in the future. So just to speak about a hypothetical situation of how you could practically apply for and leverage these funding opportunities, the example would be initially in PA, capitalizing on the RISE PA funding. So as mentioned, Pennsylvania offers one of the strongest industrial incentive programs through RISE PA, with that $400 million available for capital projects to reduce emissions, increase resilience, and create jobs. An example of how to leverage this opportunity would be as follows. A PA manufacturing site engages with a firm to successfully tap into the RISE PA funding by first completing a subsidized ASHRAE level 1, level 2 energy audit. This audit would generate a list of energy efficiency measures ranging from furnace inefficiencies to ventilation upgrades, which could qualify for downstream capital improvement funding. Without the audit, those funds would not be available. The lesson here is clear. Audits are not just a diagnostic. They are key to unlocking millions in downstream funding. Programs like RISE PA show Foundries how Foundries can make practical use of incentives to reduce cost and emissions at the same time. There are many other incentive programs that require this auditing mechanism to unlock funding. Beginning that process sooner rather than later is best to not delay any further action. And just to reiterate that point, there are many programs that offer financing, possibly on-bill financing through your utility. And there's a lot of programs that look and feel a very similar way, and they all require that audit as an initial step. And as we all know, engaging with utilities at times can take a decent amount of time. So I just wanted to reiterate that point of acting now if this is being considered. A lot of those audits can be offset through utility cost or amortized over a potential payment schedule. But if you don't take advantage of or complete that initial first step of going through that audit process with the utility, the future funding opportunities through that utility incentive program may not be applicable to the efficiency upgrades that you're considering. So diving a little bit further into that NYSERDA program, New York State offers one of the most impactful models for continuous energy improvement through its On-Site Energy Manager program, or the OSEM. This program funds up to 75% of the cost for placing an energy manager inside an industrial facility, with support capped at $200,000 a year. A manufacturing site in upstate New York, hypothetically, could leverage the OSEM to achieve around a 10% reduction in its annual energy expenditure. This energy manager embedded into the facility would help to benchmark usage, implement low-cost energy efficiency measures, and structure larger projects that qualified for additional funding through incentives or through other state programs. The On-Site Energy Manager program allows organizations to dedicate resources to energy management, which in and of itself can generate operational savings. It's one of those you can't manage what you don't measure type situation, but allocating resources and looking to state and utilities to offset those costs to organizations as the situations or programs present themselves, that in and of itself can generate some or allow organizations to capture the low-hanging fruit that may exist throughout the facility, and just really to help quantify those opportunities, which sometimes can compress timelines for implementation because it's understood what the financial impact, the operational savings may be by completing those measures. And for manufacturing organizations, the lesson I think is clear. Having dedicated energy experts on site drives continuous improvement. It accelerates project execution and ensures that that individual is bringing the state and utility incentive opportunities to the table. This model shows that incentives don't just reduce upfront cost, they can also institutionalize energy savings as a part of daily operations. One of the big benefits from this type of incentive program is that it does require organizations to think more holistically about energy management as a program, and establishing that within your organization with a diverse group of stakeholders, ranging from operations to finance, and bringing those individuals to the table on a consistent basis to understand pain points and challenges, and how these incentive programs, when capitalized on, can generate meaningful change in operational savings for an organization. Moving to the Midwest. So again, just example opportunities of how you could leverage these state utility incentive or grant programs. The difference here is we're also talking about community solar. So in the Midwest, Illinois provides a great example of how Foundries can stack multiple programs for the maximum impact. Through the Illinois Shines program, an industrial facility could subscribe to community solar, cutting its electricity bills by between 5 and 10% without having to install on-site solar panels. So these community solar programs are not specific to Illinois. They are a state-by-state program, and they are really phenomenal opportunities for long-standing organizations that are looking to capture savings on your utility invoices, as a way to reduce that operational cost or potentially to capture that reduction in the operations cost to further investment into other programs. And that goes to that stacking point mentioned in the second bullet. Hopefully, by doing that, you could leverage additional rebates through the utility ComEd, hypothetically, to cover additional cost for the incentive upgrades, be it the furnace motor efficiency, VFDs, HVAC, etc. So you can look to try to stack these programs and the savings opportunities and present that information internally to show the overall benefit that capturing these incentives will bring to the organization. Typically, and again, this is a case-by-case, state-by-state, organization-by-organization situation, but by combining these programs, a facility could be cash flow positive in year one, especially if you're able to achieve those higher total percent savings opportunities based on the projects that are identified. It demonstrates how community solar efficiency rebates and industrial upgrades can be strategically combined to reduce capital cost and operating expenses. For manufacturing facilities, the Midwest model shows that smart stacking of these incentives is often the difference between a long payback and immediate returns. And this also just speaks to that comprehensive knowledge of funding opportunities that exist. There is typically a good, better, best way to stack these programs or to sequence these, which we'll discuss in some of the later slides. But there are ways to try to do this correctly based on what is happening at the facility or capital allocation, age of infrastructure, etc. But taking a step back and taking a long-tailed approach to implementing these solutions is typically the best option to ensure that you're capturing all funding opportunities available to you at that point in time. So the cost of delay is the cost of doing nothing, alternatively. Delaying action on energy efficiency comes with significant hidden costs. First, the obvious one is missed savings. Organizations that delay upgrades often spend 10 to 30% more on energy than necessary. There's also the cost of maintenance, repair, etc. That's not included there. These cost components annually can reduce competitiveness. Second, compliance penalties in some areas are already in place. New York City specifically, and some other areas throughout the United States have carbon fines that can exceed 6 figures per year for facilities that fail to meet their emissions caps. Similar as frameworks, as I mentioned, are spreading across the country. We see that typically starting with some level of energy benchmarking and migrating into some type of carbon compliance at the state or utility level. Oop, my apologies. Finally, stakeholder expectations are also shifting fast. Investors, customers, and employees now weigh ESG performance heavily in their decision-making. Organizations that act early can brand themselves as leaders, while those who delay risk reputational damage and can impact access to capital and markets. The cost of delay is also that these incentive programs do change. We see quite evidently throughout the United States through these utility incentive programs. They're typically updated on a pretty consistent basis, usually every 2 to 3 years. And failure to act can potentially remove that funding opportunity from an organization. Sometimes, and most recently, we're seeing lighting incentives starting to go away, mainly because lighting is becoming a part of energy code across most areas of the United States. And utilities are less and less likely to incentivize the replacement of equipment that is now required by code. To that end, incentives are unlikely to incentivize the replacement of failed equipment. So again, that cost of inaction, if you wait until something fails, you may remove the eligibility that your organization would have had to receive an incentive if you do wait until the point of failure. So again, just comes back to the importance of planning, forward thinking, and bringing the right stakeholders to the table. So prioritizing smart investments. Not all upgrades are equal. Organizations should prioritize projects that deliver the highest return on investment while also unlocking incentives. Some examples would be the melting and casting operations are typically the largest energy loads in foundries. Furnace retrofits, casting line improvements can drive major efficiency gains, often paying back quickly once incentives are applied. Second, ventilation and compressed air systems are significant hidden energy consumers. Upgrades here not only cut usage, but also reduce maintenance costs and downtime. A general rule for incentives is if it saves energy, you can likely get some form of utility incentive, the magnitude of which depends on what program that you follow. And again, just comes back to that having audits through the utilities as required will enable the deepest program participation. Helping or finding firms that can assist with navigating these complexities, the changing landscape that is utility incentives, can help to compress timelines and help organizations make decisions faster. Finally, renewable energy projects like solar and storage also offer a dual benefit: resilience and long-term cost predictability. When paired with the federal tax credits that still exist as of this conversation, these projects become much, much more affordable. By strategically prioritizing, Foundries can capture maximum savings while aligning with funding eligibility. We typically recommend the consideration, unless there's a significant organizational prioritization of renewables, that the focus initially is really on reducing your operating costs, your natural gas consumption, your electricity consumption, such that on-site renewables, if they're being considered or important, are right-sized for that facility. That again can change depending upon your organizational priorities, but we think that pursuing those deep energy retrofits is in anybody's best interest if they're looking to make considerable impact on reducing emissions, saving energy, and ultimately saving dollars. Some other efficiency opportunities that may qualify for incentives, and I stress may. Everything is kind of a case-by-case, project-by-project perspective. There's a lot of variables and boxes that need to be checked, but they are really, really good opportunities and worth pursuing or worth uncovering eligibility for anything that's listed here. So it ranges from, again, furnace upgrades to waste heat recovery to LED lighting. Possibly, again, my comment on lighting incentives going away is not pervasive throughout all utility programs, just some. Variable frequency drives or VFDs, any automation that would be enabled through the installation of that control, higher efficiency motors, pumps, etc. Demand controlled ventilation. All of these are projects that we believe put you in a good position to capture incentives if they're available to you at the state, utility, or federal level. So next up, we have another 2 questions that we want to pose to the group. So I'll pass it back to Bill, and he'll throw those up on the screen. First question. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Sorry, Jeff, go ahead.
The first question is, what type of plant upgrades are you most interested in pursuing in the near term? These are general categories as we understand it, but it's good to poll the audience to see what's of most importance to you so that we can follow up with any additional points to support those types of projects. The second question is really us trying to help understand the audience's pain points. So what is preventing progress if you're considering investing in infrastructure or energy efficiency projects? Is it a lack of funding? Do you just have uncertainty about the return on that investment? Is it limited internal resources, be it financial, personnel, project management, etc.? Just general red tape and regulatory complexity, or other. Um, all of these are typically pain points that we see within our client base. So it'd be interesting to see of the attendees here, what from your perspective is preventing progress for projects that are being considered.
Yeah, we have a good amount of responses in so far. For the first question, which type of plant upgrades are you most interested in pursuing over the next 12 to 18 months? The vast majority are saying process equipment upgrades. There's also a few for energy efficiency and renewable energy as well, but the vast majority it is process equipment upgrades.
That makes sense.
For the second poll, what's the biggest challenge in moving forward with energy efficiency projects? It's a mixed bag for sure. 40% saying lack of funding, 25% saying uncertain ROI, 20% saying limited internal resources, and 13% saying other.
Interesting. Well, hopefully the content here, excuse me, especially for the lack of funding or the uncertain ROI, obviously the incentives are opportunities to reduce that first cost. And these incentive programs, to capture incentives, you typically need to work with various utilities to confirm savings, especially when savings is the thing that dictates the incentive that you would get. So working through that process and looking for external resources, especially when even that cost can be offset from grant and incentive opportunities, can really help to capture or present opportunities that address a possible lack of funding or clearly define what that return on investment would be. We also typically like to uncover a little bit more layers in that return on investment analysis. Are there other aspects of a project that may or may not be financial? Are you or have you been investing significantly in maintaining a certain asset? Is an asset critical to the operation of that facility? Trying to put a number to what would happen if that piece of equipment were to again fail or go down. There are other ways to layer some complexity, I guess is the best of the way that I would put it. But just quantify some other variables that can help drive the conversation home with the various stakeholders within your respective organizations. And again, just that comes back to having an understanding of what those points are. What is that? What is an agreeable return on investment for the organization? I mentioned 5 years earlier in the presentation. Is that good enough for certain projects? But partnering with certain organizations like my team, we can help really uncover these opportunities and present a strong project to your team and your organization to hopefully make that progress. And wanted to also just come back down to, and I'll move down to the next slide here, which is just talking about partnering for success. And our team is very well positioned to try to support organizations, but these incentives, like I mentioned, they do change on a pretty consistent basis. Complexity to the filing process for them, but it's all very manageable, and it really just needs to be something that is adjusted or implemented into your program or project development process. If you're going to be onboarding an engineer to design a system or going to bid for a piece of equipment, bringing somebody in with knowledge of incentive programs to at the beginning of that process, they can make suggestions or recommendations or ensure that the timeline for completion for the incentive, getting a possible utility representative out to the site to visually inspect the information, getting an application submitted, that all of those things are aligned with the standard project approach and project timeline, such that incentives don't cause for issues or delay, but really only just add value to the overall project. So And again, it can be overwhelming. Hopefully this wasn't too much information, but there is a lot to understand. And working with experienced advisors can be of extreme value to an organization to demystify that situation and bring clarity to your teams. Energy advisors bring specialized expertise to identify these hidden opportunities, quantify the potential savings, and ensure no incentive is left untapped. I always like to say all organizations pay enough money to the respective utilities. It's always good to get a check back from them. And I always hate to see customers pursue energy efficiency improvements at their facility and to leave that money on the table. We could also help create tailored roadmaps that sequence these projects to maximize the funding eligibility and operational alignment. Additionally, and what Environ does as well is not really just thinking about efficiency, but going a bit beyond efficiency. We also bring deep energy procurement expertise. By securing stable competitive energy contracts, we can help organizations manage not just energy consumption, but also price risk. When energy efficiency upgrades are combined with smart procurement, the result is resilience against both rising energy costs and cost and grid volatility. This dual approach ensures lasting profitability and strategic advantage. It is a good point to note as well that if you're making a considerable change to your energy consumption profile at your facility, possibly looking at shifting load from gas to electric, or conversely, making sure that your energy supply agreements for those that are located in deregulated energy markets, that your contracts capture that your consultants are aware of that, such that there's not undue or unnecessary risk in those contracts, and that you're bringing a holistic approach to energy efficiency and energy procurement. And making sure also that if you're also just implementing energy efficiency measures, that your purchasing approach takes into account what that does for that load profile. Does it make it peakier? Does it smooth it out? Those are things and aspects of the cost of delivered power and gas that could be impacted by how you use energy. And those are things that we would also want to potentially capture in that return on investment analysis. For those that are in the PJM grid territory, any type of energy efficiency measure when paired with a peak load reduction electrically, you're likely to see not only demand-related cost decreases on utility invoices, but you're also going to mitigate a lot of the demand-related cost components in the energy supply markets. And there's ways for us to work with you to capture those savings. So it's not just taking that historical look back of what was my cost of electricity. It's really, peeling the layers of that onion back a little bit further, and projecting those cost savings into the future based on what we know, and based on our market expertise that our team brings to the table. So to try to summarize where to start. First, as I mentioned and reiterated here a good amount of time, the first place to start is with an audit. Whether or not that's your organization conducting that audit yourself or bringing in a third party to do a full ASHRAE level assessment, audits are really the gateway to funding. They identify quick wins and ensure your projects are aligned with the incentive requirements. And again, just wanted to reiterate that point that sometimes these audits are absolutely required to capture the best savings or incentive opportunities that may be available to a customer. But once you know what you have, and possibly that audit and due diligence exercise could also come with a more robust analysis of energy consumption patterns, interval data, utility bill data, et cetera. Once we know how you're consuming energy and where the opportunities are, the next step is to build that custom roadmap. We all know that based on the polling questions, that not all projects should or will likely happen at once. But there is a way to sequence them to strategically maximize the return on investment and incentive or funding eligibility. Our team can help to align those upgrades with possible capital funding cycles, and to also attempt to minimize some of the capital strain to achieve or to implement these projects. The final stage here is to just apply and execute. So it's applying for the grants and executing the projects. With expert guidance, your organization can secure grants, rebates, tax incentives, possibly, while ensuring that projects are implemented efficiently. This three-step process simplifies the journey from intent to impact, unlocking possibly millions of dollars in savings depending upon the size of your organization. So we've covered a lot of ground today, and from the urgency of energy efficiency to the specifics of funding opportunities in the Midwest, New York, PA. But I'd like to open the floor for questions. We'd like everybody to think about how these incentives might apply to your operations. And also just wanted to highlight that no two facilities are the same, regardless of what you produce, what you operate, how you operate. But our team is here to help you navigate the specifics, customize solutions, and develop applications that are pertinent to you and your team. I also just want to note that my contact information is here. So if there's anything that I could expand upon or any questions that you may have outside of this webinar, please feel free to either reach out to me at the email listed here or at our generic email address, which is also listed in the contact information section of this slide.
Thanks, Jeff. Really appreciate it. Great job. So yeah, as Jeff mentioned, we have Q&A open now, so we'll give it a minute or two here if anyone wants to ask some questions. There should be a Q&A thing at the top of your screen. Just ask any questions that you may have. None have come in so far, Jeff, so we'll give it a minute. Okay, we got a couple in here. Do you know of any Wisconsin-based incentives?
Off the top of my head, I do not, but we do have a resource internally that our team maintains with a list of available incentives at the state level. So if you wanted to reach out to me separately, we'd be happy to respond with the opportunities that do exist in your state, with some links and resources that you can take internally for some further research. Or we could provide some additional information on a follow-up conversation.
Another question that came in, it says compressed air alternatives question mark.
I assume that is a question about the opportunities that exist if you were to replace a compressed air system. Transparently, I would have to defer to our technical team, our engineers. I believe that was a mention in the energy efficiency opportunity list, which transparently was provided to us by our engineers, our PEs on staff. So again, I can take that question to those PEs and get a response to the team or to Bill to circulate to the folks that asked that question.
Great. Another question just came in. How receptive have you found utility companies to help since improvements also likely mean less revenue for them?
My experience is that utilities with these incentive programs have their own targets and goals to take that funding and deliver it back to organizations. Incentives are generally funded through some type of on-bill line item, and they are very willing to and receptive to helping organizations improve energy efficiency. It does, in theory, mean less money for them, but utilities have their own fair share of challenges with grid modernization, grid improvements, and the like. So a lot of these incentive programs are developed at a level above the utilities themselves, and have teams that are dedicated to working with large commercial organizations, large manufacturing organizations, to effectively get rid of that money. Even such that sometimes towards the end of funding cycles, if there's additional funding available, if you're active and engaged with the utility, that there are times in which they were willing to divulge or give even, or kind of a sweeter incentive, if you will. So intuitively understand the question. Doesn't make sense, but my experience is that the utilities are very, very willing and able to work with organizations to reduce the amount of energy that you're consuming, and to divulge or disperse the funds that they receive through those on bill line items. Sometimes like an energy efficiency charge of sorts.
Great. Well, I don't see any more coming in, so I think it's a pretty good place to stop. I'm gonna go ahead and stop recording here. As I mentioned,